We are thrilled to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Sam. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jill. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a super exciting journey that you and the team at Dapper Labs and, of course, at Axiom Zen have been on. And it's been a whirlwind of a year for you. So let's go back to the beginning. How did this all start? What is your origin story?
Yeah, we founded Axiom Zen all the way back in 2012, me and my brother Rohan. And the concept behind it was a fairly simple one. We wanted to shape the impact of emerging technologies. Rohan was a VC down in the Valley. I was up here in Canada. And we were seeing these amazing companies and these amazing teams come together, raise funding, and then sort of fizzle out as they went along because they just ran out of funding and they had to disband and go out their separate ways. So he thought, okay, these are brilliant people that are coming together and thinking of great ideas, but not necessarily getting off the ground, and then they're going about their separate ways. So how can we fix that? How can we keep people together? So we decided to assemble a team of just like-minded team members, tech enthusiasts, and just work together to come up with big ideas that we would develop into products and eventually spin out into their own separate businesses. How would we do that while avoiding the trap of raising funding and then running out of funding? We started a consulting studio on the side as well. So we would take on external projects, work for Fortune 500 companies, big startups, essentially just work for hire, but interesting work. We would partner with the companies and build whatever they needed to be done. And then we would use those funds to fund our own internal experiments and put our backing and resources behind them and just experiment, see what works, see what doesn't work. And then once we identify some sort of product market fit, spin it out into its own company, raise funding for it, and let it go out in the world on its own. So we've done this now with 3 different companies, Routific, ZenHub, and Dapper Labs being the most recent one.
It's a really exciting story to hear you talk about that in a very different and unique model. I know there's a lot of startup founders on the call with us today that would aspire to your level of success. And when you think about in the early days as a startup, maybe the hopes, but also the doubts that you had, is there any sort of particular advice you'd give to other startups based on your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche piece of advice, but it's don't doubt yourself, don't lose hope. We were fortunate to be able to be funded from the start and profitable from the start. A lot of startups we know aren't in that position, hence why they go out and raise funding and try and get some sort of seed investment before they actually start and take off the ground. But even if what you try to build doesn't work, you can always make sure to pivot into something else, right? Always make sure to have enough money in the bank. So in order to if what you're working on doesn't work, shift focus to something else, right? Versus spending all your money, all your resources on just that one thing. Always have a backup plan, always have something in the bank in order to focus on something else, essentially. We learned that lesson as well. Thankfully, it's been going well for us. So.
Oh, it's amazing. No, that's really great advice. So don't lose heart and believe in yourself, but don't forget, you might have to pivot. You don't know how, you don't know when, but you're going to probably have to do it. So try and stay open-minded and flexible. That's great. Now, listen, people know, I think Dapper Labs is the story that people are probably most familiar with, but tell us a bit more about Axiom Zen itself and what you now hope for. We've heard what caused you to sort of start in the beginning. What are your ambitions for Axiom Zen and what might happen in the next 5 years or 10 years?
That's a very good question, Jill. I mean, the past 2 years, honestly, we've been focusing on our 2 main portfolio companies, ZenHub and Dapper Labs, trying to give them all the resources they need to be able to get to where they need to go. Dapper is starting to get in a good enough shape where Axiom Zen can slowly start to ramp its involvement now and shift focus on what it's good at, right? Trying to find the next big thing to work on. there's still so many different opportunities out there, not just in the blockchain space itself. Like Dapper is focused on consumer blockchain, but there's also other applications as well that can provide benefits for it. There's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence, there's VR, AR. There's so many different things you can pick and try and focus on, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now. On the flip side as well, Axiom Zen is sort of acting as a hybrid private equity VC firm of sorts. We're trying to find interesting products, interesting projects, interesting companies that we identify with, and just put some sort of seed funding behind them and help provide our expertise to them and take them the next step that they need to go to.
That's great. Now, listen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I got to say to the audience, he's open to you getting in touch with him, it sounds like. So I would. If you think you have an interesting idea, you can just ask, right? So absolutely.
Not just on the blockchain space, like in general, anything in tech. So.
Fantastic. And you're never going to get a better offer than that. You got it at a BC Tech event. I'm just telling you, okay? But listen, can we maybe dwell on some of the really super exciting moments that you've had in the last year? So I feel like I can't open a tech journal or a newspaper without hearing about another amazing success that you've had. What was the highlight of the last year for you?
Yeah, there's been so many, but I mean, to date, we have over 1 million members on our platform, more than like 3.7 million in transactions, almost 900 million in sales. It's been a roller coaster of a ride in secondary market sales. So that's been really exciting. We always expected it to take off. It just, the scale and the how quickly it came about was a little bit of a surprise to me, at least. And then on the flip side, we're working with some amazing partners, right? NBA, now the NFL, La Liga in Spain, the UFC. So there's so many more out there that we want to be working with, that we think we can work with as well. So stay tuned on that front too. And then, we built our own blockchain Flow. Like, we've seen it grow from 50 independent companies building on it to over 650 now, just over the past 9 months. And that community alone has raised over $700 million this year, and over $1 billion in total, not including the money raised by Dapper Labs. So it's.
That's impressive. Yeah. That's really impressive. It's hard to keep up with that many successes in a year. Listen, okay, so if you don't mind, you're working with some of the biggest brands in the world. Is there ever any surprise that it's a company from Vancouver, British Columbia that is managing to have this success with these amazing brands?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, maybe, but especially now during COVID times, like, everyone is remote, so it doesn't matter where you're from or where you're based. Our team now is mostly global. We've always been headquartered in Vancouver, and we will stay headquartered in Vancouver, BC. It's our home. It will always be our home. But we have team members from all over the globe now. Over the past 9 months, we've more than doubled in size, and a lot of those folks have been based in the US, based in Europe, based in Africa, all over the place. So COVID has made that a little bit easier for us. But yeah, that's always like, oh, this little Canadian company based in VC. Well, not little anymore, but we're trying to also raise the profile of BC and Canada in general. Like, it's not just like you got to be in the Valley to be successful. You can be anywhere, really.
Yeah, those are wonderful words of inspiration to hear. And I found COVID really interesting. Like, while we're all trapped within our four walls, the world has never been smaller, and it's never been easier to get a meeting or talk to key decision makers in different parts of the world. So I'm hopeful that maybe as we come out of this pandemic, there's new opportunities for tech companies in BC, and certainly with examples like you to follow, it's good to hear those encouraging words. Now, you've obviously grown really fast. It's a lovely problem to have, right? It's great to have the problem that you grow really fast and you scale really fast and you have to cope with that. But what was that like as a journey? either what was difficult about it or what was surprising, what advice would you give to others about the challenges of scaling up fast?
The hardest part right now is probably finding the talent. I'm sure everyone online right now will know. It's a very competitive environment right now to bring in qualified, experienced people. We're competing with some of the biggest, well-funded companies in the world. Even when we were smaller, we were competing with some of the biggest, well-funded companies in the world. And they don't make it easy when they can just shell out, checks that are double in size of what you're offering a candidate. Where we tried to differentiate ourselves was around building excitement around what we were doing and what we were trying to accomplish, and get that vision through to the candidate, and hopefully they find it appealing and then decide to come on board based off of that. Obviously having money in the bank is helpful, but don't just solely focus on shelling out checks to candidates to bring them on board. Make sure they're excited about what you're doing and the product that you want to build, because that's the type of person you want at your company anyways. You don't just want someone here that's here for the money. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I started rambling on.
No, that's perfect. So the challenge of scale and scaling fast has really been about talent.
Yeah, exactly. Talent. And then just trying to maintain the culture that you've built over a period of time, right? The culture we built when we were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, the more people you add, the more it changes, right? So figuring out a way to maintain what you had at 20 or 30 versus what you have at 350 is a challenge as well. And that's what we're going through right now, especially.
Yeah, well, I think it will be reassuring to everyone on the phone to hear that talent is a challenge, no matter how big and successful you are, but that the way to tackle it is to stay focused on your purpose and your culture and what your company really represents, and make sure you hire the right people. And that it is possible to aim high and go global from here in BC, which I'm thrilled to hear about. So listen, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your team, and because I know the culture that you've built a little bit. And this year you're a finalist for the Technology Impact Award for Innovation, and I'm sure you're proud of that yourself. But what did it mean to your team to sort of get that hometown recognition? You've got so much global recognition, but this is from the people who love you most and have you in our hearts. So what did it mean to your team to get that nomination?
Yeah, they're honestly, they're pretty pumped, and it's something they can show their friends, their families. It's local, people know about it, and people know about it, and people talk amongst themselves. So it was exciting for me. It was exciting for the team as well. And yes, we haven't won yet, and we're just the finalists, whatever. But even if we don't win, it's still pretty exciting to have that feature, like, well, BC Tech Finalist Award, and then they can show their friends that and their family members that, and get people pumped. I had people pinging me saying, hey, that's really cool. You guys are finalists. I was like, I didn't tell you about it, but like they knew about it. So seeing that is always cool. And yes, we're global and we get recognition globally as well. And that's always fun. But for me, especially, like something in BC and Vancouver is pretty cool.
Well, I got to tell you, you're filling my bucket. So take that, NBA. Listen, I'm going to open it up to the chat because I know that there's a ton of people on the line who'd love to ask you questions. So just giving a prompt to the audience, you're welcome to ask anything you like about the company, about blockchain, about anything that you're interested in hearing from Sam, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. Let me just go there now and see what I'm seeing. Okay, here's a good one from Ayrton. This is the last one that was in there. Can you please elaborate a little bit on plans and strategy for the recent acquisition of Brud? How do you see the place of DAOs and virtual avatars in Dapper Labs growth?
Yeah, I mean, we're not calling it Dapper Collectives, and they're trying to pave the way for decentralization of social media and trying to democratize, online shared interest communities. And they're the people behind Lil Miquela, if anyone knows or doesn't know what Lil Miquela is. So it was an interesting process. It is our first acquisition. We've never done something like that before. So it was a learning process for us as well, and it went through pretty smoothly. But the team there is going to focus on what they do best, which is focusing on DAOs and that unique online shared interest decentralization community part. And we're going to support them in however way we can, whether it's with resources or just advice or whatever, but they will remain separate. They will be called Dapper Collectives, but they're going to be focused on what they're doing best, and we'll stay out of it for now, at least.
And that sounds pretty consistent with your vision when you started Axiom Zen, that you're looking to build a sort of portfolio and independent businesses under one umbrella.
Exactly. And they're experimenting too, right? And you can't get anywhere without experimenting. So they're going to be focusing on a bunch of different things, and they're going to be ramping that team up as well, and going to see what works and what doesn't work and take it from there. Perfect.
So another question here from the chat, and this is an interesting one. So who inspired you on your journey? So when you think back, you and your brother became startup entrepreneurs, but what in your background caused you to take that plunge together and decide to start this whole adventure? Who inspired you guys?
Yeah, I mean, he may kill me for saying this, not kill me, it's the wrong word, but for me, it was my brother. He was in the tech space long before I was. I was supposed to go to law school and become a lawyer and eventually a politician. That's where my degree in political science and history comes in. But just talking to him and seeing his excitement around the tech space and like seeing these startups doing amazing things down in the valley also piqued my interest. And then when the two of us just came together and decided to do this, it was just like perfect match made in heaven. Now he's my brother and there's family things involved, and like, it's family. So you don't always get along, but at the end of the day, we wouldn't be here if we couldn't like communicate and talk to each other. On like a more personal level, probably our father as well, entrepreneur, didn't go to university, didn't even graduate high school, but has been focused on tech from, not tech, but just entrepreneurship from the start, and has founded multiple companies and done multiple different things. So just seeing that hustle in him while we were growing up also always piqued our interest.
That's great. There's something truly inspirational, I think, about family and finding a way to be inspired by family and work with family. If you can do it, you're never going to have a better partner. Look, Dean is saying, hey, Sam, you've experienced so much that you've become a role model for many entrepreneurs. How have mentors impacted you? And what advice do you have for entrepreneurs seeking leadership support? Okay, that's a great question, because we don't always know all the answers ourselves, right? Who do you turn to for advice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud to say that we have an amazing network of advisors, both on the Dapper Labs front, but also at the Axiom Zen front. We rely on their expertise. Like, we admit that we don't know everything. No one does, right? So very early on, we tried to partner with brilliant people, like-minded individuals who'd done this type of thing before, who had the experience, who had the expertise, and who were interested in sort of what we were doing. And we just talked to them, asked them questions. I think as busy as they are, most people will always make the time to talk to a fellow entrepreneur. At least I think so, and I would for sure as well. They also like, there's something about your company that will interest them in order to talk to you. And then you can provide incentive to them as well, whether it's like a small advisory grant or share in your company. They would always appreciate that, or you just straight up pay them cash. But it's a valuable resource to call upon, and like, just do your research, go on LinkedIn, see who's out there, and just message them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, or go into your network and see who does. And then when it comes to you raising funding and raising money, make sure, I mean, I realize not all companies are in this position and can't afford to do so, but try and find like-minded investors, people who believe in your vision and people who you think could add value to you long-term. Right, our initial investors have been amazing partners for us from the start. They've been doing this forever. Some of the greatest people that we've ever worked with, and they provide us advice. They're not here to dictate the trajectory of our company. They're here to partner with us, to work with us, to get to where we need to go. And so picking the right people is also very, very, very important. But again, I realize not everyone may have the flexibility to do so.
it's fantastic advice, and it's advice we've heard before in these sessions, right? That it's so valuable to pick the right capital, and capital that's really aligned to your interests and your vision. And when you get that right, you get so much more than money. And when you get it wrong, it can cost you a lot of money.
Exactly.
So it's something we're hoping to do a little bit of work on at BC Tech, helping companies to be better customers and seekers of capital. So we'll try and launch that in 2022. A question from Raf, which is what are some of the opportunities you see for blockchain? Boy, that's a big question, but you're a great person to ask.
I mean, it's so very early on right now still. I mean, NFTs are the thing right now, and we're doubling down on our work on NFTs. I like to think of an NFT as a digital envelope of sorts. So in a traditional envelope, you have whatever you put inside, and then at the front of it, you have your address or whatever it's going. An NFT, on the envelope, you would have, all the details around what's inside, who it comes from, where it came from, and all that stuff. And inside, you would have the actual thing. And that can't be duplicated, that can't be copied. You know where it's been at all times, you know where it's going, and you know the price of it at all times. So it's just an added layer of transparency. Again, it's still very early on, but I think more and more people are starting to realize the benefits of it. Governments are starting to get interested as well. Good thing or a bad thing, you don't know yet. Whenever government starts getting interested in what you're doing, you're doing something right or wrong, but it's a good sign usually. So it's still very on, but there's still huge potential. Whether it's digital collectibles like Top Shot, or it's art or something else, right? It's transparent, visible, secure, and like I at least like to think of it as what the internet was when it was first launching. Like we're in that phase, Internet 3.0, I guess they like to call it now. Yeah. But yeah, it's by far, there's still a lot of talk about it today, but we're not near the level of scale that it could be yet. Hence why we're trying to appeal to so many consumers, because that's with like fun games like NBA Top Shot, because that's usually how we can start to explain to people the benefits that it provides.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But as you say, it's a paradigm shift, right? So we can't quite imagine what it is because we're not in it yet. Good question from Justin. How, just picking up on the capital point we were talking about earlier. So how important do you think it is for BC entrepreneurs to seek capital from Silicon Valley VCs, or is there other advice you'd give them?
I would say it's fairly important only because of how many times they've gone through it and how many companies they've funded and how much success they've had. That's the only reason why. Not to hit on Canada, but there's been unicorns in Canada as well. But by far, the majority of unicorn companies have come from the Valley or from the US in general. These people have been through it multiple times, have funded companies early on from the seed stage and watched them grow to where they're at today. So they will know what they've been through. They'll have that expertise and that guidance that they can provide you. Yeah, and there's a lot more money down in the US right now as well. So
yeah, I think that's it's just tapping into that experience. I think can be so valuable. I was actually talking to a tech founder of a Boston-based startup recently, and even just his experience and that of his investors, they'd sort of seen 20 almost identical companies to his, right? And tapping into that rather than it being the first time you've seen it can bring some real value. I always say it's part of the mix. It's not the only thing that you should be looking for, and it's not the answer to everything, but it's smart to at least be exploring with VCs in the Valley.
Yeah.
Erica is okay. This is very pragmatic. Where do you look for inspiration? Do you have favorite books, maybe management books, or favorite theories, or business publications, or podcasts, or where do you get your ideas?
Where do we get our ideas? Where do we get how to put cats on the blockchain?
Where did that come from, actually?
From the team, not from me, not from Roham. It was a group effort from the team. we were thinking like, okay, what's in right now? What goes viral constantly? What do people love seeing videos, photos of all the time? And like cats came up. And then was like, okay, then let's figure out a way to put cats on the blockchain and make it all cute and fuzzy. And this is one of the CryptoKitties. I'm wearing this shirt here. By the way, we're not done with CryptoKitties. I know it seems like we've abandoned it, but like stay tuned on that front as well. It's our baby and we're not letting it go anytime soon. So
That's awesome.
But back to the question, I don't really listen to podcasts anymore just because like don't have the time. And then books as well. Like it's been tough to read a full book from start to finish, given like how insanely busy we are. So I generally focused on articles and opinion pieces online. Harvard Business Review is a very good go-to for me, especially because I'm focused more on operations, people, legal, HR side of things. So they have a lot of good articles and advice there. In terms of books, one of my favorite ones is, Ride of a Lifetime by former Disney CEO, Bob Iger. And then also, obviously, it's a cliche one, but Steve Jobs' book as well is great. So.
Yeah, I think it's really important to read things that, again, sort of scare you and encourage you to aim higher and think things differently, but that's really helpful. Do you see DAO disrupting the traditional fundraising and governance models in Web 3.0? Question from Sunil.
Yeah, Sunil, I'll tell you my opinion, and you quickly, as a non-tech person, you're sort of going over my head a little bit, but I'll try and answer the best I can. No, I don't see it disrupting it anytime soon. Again, we're very, very, very early on right now. People are starting to get interested, are just starting to learn about NFTs, much less like DAOs and what they're about. So it's still very early on, but I think eventually, potentially, yes.
That's exciting. Okay, let me just ask again for anybody who wants to raise some questions in the chat, please do. I have one or two other questions that I want to ask Sam, so I'm gonna ask him my first question, then see if there's anything else in the chat, and then come back to him for a final question. So I would be remiss if I did not ask, what kind of talent are you looking to hire for right now? Are there jobs available? Are you open to people applying to come and work for you?
Yes, 100%, please apply. And it's a wide spectrum of roles all over the place, from customer support all the way through to senior technical talent. But we also don't like to box people in. We've had multiple people just apply generally because they've been interested in what we're doing in our company, and we've managed to find a home for them here. So don't be discouraged if your experience or expertise necessarily isn't covered by the open positions on the site. What's the worst could happen? We say no, right? So there's no harm in just applying.
Okay, well, you're giving very open asks to people on the phone, so I think nobody could complain about you not being open. So Sam is available to you. Reach out.
My talent team may like come back and say, Sam, what the hell are you doing? But no, I'm just kidding.
Explosion of interest. But yeah, so if you're interested in finding out about working there, if you're interested in advice, if you've got an idea you want to pitch, please go ahead, right? This is how the magic happens. Okay, listen, I'm not seeing anything further in the chat, so I'm going to just ask you a question that I always close with, and it sometimes takes quite a while to answer, so don't be surprised if that happens to you. But when you sort of think about the potential of BC's tech sector and the people who are on the phone today, what words of advice would you give them? What are the lessons that you've learned along the way? What words of encouragement or watch points would you give them so that they can really realize their potential?
I think the biggest thing is get and excuse the language, kick-ass, awesome team behind you, first and foremost. Some of our earliest hires are still with us today. These are brilliant-minded people who share our vision, who share our values, who've been with us from the start, and arguably we wouldn't be here without them. Period. Like, we've gone through ups and downs together. They wouldn't be here if they didn't trust us. We wouldn't still have them with us if we didn't trust them. So rely on those people once you identify them and keep them. Do whatever you can to keep them. And I know in a startup environment, it's extremely rare for someone to stick around more than 2 years, much less 9 or 10. So if they're here 9 years later, they're here for a reason. So yeah, that's probably the best advice I can give is find good people, great people, and keep them. I treat some of them as really good friends now, semi-family as well. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the sign of a really strong culture, right? And but I think that's absolutely fantastic.